The bare minimum feels like love when you've been emotionally deprived long enough. And most people don't even realize it's happening. Because it doesn't start obvious, it starts subtle. You meet someone who isn't fully available, but they're not completely distant either. They're somewhere in between. And that in between is where confusion begins. They show interest, but not consistently. They give attention, but only when it suits them. They respond, but never fully engage. And because they give you something, you start focusing on what's there instead of what's missing. That's the shift. You stop measuring the relationship by consistency and start measuring it by moments. A message becomes meaningful. A call becomes significant. Basic effort starts to feel like something special. Not because it is, but because it's inconsistent. And inconsistency creates emotional value. This is another form of intermittent reinforcement. Your brain gets used to unpredictability. So when something does happen, it feels amplified. It feels bigger than it actually is. And over time, this changes your perception. You stop asking, "Is this enough for me?" And you start thinking, "At least it's something." That's where self-worth starts to erode. Not suddenly, but gradually. You lower your expectations to match their behavior. You become more understanding, more patient, more flexible. But here's the reality. You're not being understanding. You're adapting to inconsistency. And the more you adapt, the less they have to do. Because now, your standards have already adjusted. They don't need to improve. You've already met them where they are, even if that place doesn't fully meet you. And this is where emotional imbalance grows. You start giving more, thinking more, investing more, while they stay the same. And it doesn't feel unfair at first, because you're still holding on to potential. You think, they'll get there. They just need time. They're trying in their own way. But potential is not reality, and confusing the two keeps you stuck. Because you're not responding to who they are, you're responding to who you believe they could be. And that belief makes you tolerate things you normally wouldn't accept. Slow replies, lack of effort, emotional distance, all of it becomes understandable. And that's the danger. Because when everything becomes understandable, nothing gets questioned. And when nothing gets questioned, nothing changes. So the pattern continues, and slowly, you start to feel emotionally drained. But you don't leave, because you've already invested too much time, energy, emotion. And walking away now feels like losing something important, even if what you had was never fully real. That's the attachment, not to the person, but to the effort you put in, and the hope that it would eventually become something more. But here's the truth. Real love doesn't require you to lower your standards. It doesn't ask you to accept confusion. It doesn't reward you with inconsistency. Real love is consistent. Not perfect, but present. Not intense, but stable. And most importantly, it doesn't make you question your value. If someone truly wants to be in your life, you won't have to decode their behavior. You won't have to wait for clarity. You won't have to settle for fragments, because they'll show up clearly, consistently, intentionally. And once you experience that, you'll realize something powerful. What you were accepting before was never love. It was access. They gave you access, not commitment. Access to their time, their attention, their presence, occasionally, but not their consistency, not their effort, not their intention. And access is not enough, not for something real. So if the bare minimum feels like love right now, it's not because it is. It's because you've adjusted to less. And the moment you stop adjusting, you start seeing clearly again. You start expecting more, not from them, but for yourself. And that changes everything.